Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for the opportunity to join you in this panel. The title of my talk is Advanced HIV Disease at the Outpatient Department, Opportunities for Intervention. I come from the Philippines, which has much to benefit from this topic today, and as you may have experienced earlier from the whole conference. I present the case of a 26-year-old male who complained of headache with multiple episodes of vomiting 4 weeks prior to admission. During an initial visit to a private clinic, cranial CT scan was done, which was normal. He was given unrecalled medications, which he took with poor compliance. The headache and vomiting persisted. In the 3 weeks that followed, he had general body weakness and noted blurring of vision. A week prior to the admission, he consulted a second clinic where an HIV test was done and which was positive. He was advised admission, but he refused. He was given fluconazole 200 milligrams once a day for oral thrush, along with betahistine and multivitamins. After a few days, with the persistence of symptoms, weakness confining him to bed, plus cough and shortness of breath, he was brought to the hospital. Upon admission, he showed mild signs of brain injury and respiratory distress. A fundoscopy revealed grade 1 papilledema. The two main conditions at this point were a respiratory process, bacterial pneumonia versus pneumocystis, and the subacute to chronic CNS infection, TB meningitis versus cryptococcal meningitis. For the pneumonia, he was given both piperacillin tazobactam and azithromycin, and cotrimoxazole plus prednisone for the PCP. Fluconazole that was initially given for the oral thrush was continued at 200 milligrams per day. A lumbar tap was done, which revealed an opening pressure of 15, positive for the India Ink test, and latex agglutination test with a ratio of 1:1024. The fluconazole dose was increased to 1,200 milligrams per day, and amphotericin B deoxycholate was added for the induction dose. The CSF and blood culture grew Cryptococcus neoformans, and respiratory studies were negative for both PCP and PTB. Patient expired after 17 hospital days. So the first issue I'd like to discuss is the opportunity for intervention at the outpatient visit for AHD cases like this. It's a sad fact that in Asia, 72% of people living with HIV are late presenters. The same seen in the Philippines. This may be a rational conclusion since time is needed for complications to develop, but it has been also postulated that these populations may have a lower perceived risk for HIV. This case unfortunately highlights missed opportunities that we may have encountered ourselves. First, the chance to do an HIV test on the first visit. Second, a point-of-care CD4 test which takes 20 to 40 minutes and would have determined the likelihood of OIs and guide the physician on ART initiation. And thirdly, ideally, routine screening for OIs that are guided by CD4 counts, like the cryptococcal antigen test, a fundoscopy for CMV retinitis, and the universal screening for TB. In many of these settings, however, access to these point-of-care tests is not universal. The value of having a serum CRAG test or cryptococcal antigen test as a screening tool for patients with risk for cryptococcal meningitis should be emphasized. Other methods include latex agglutination, ELISA, and the 15-minute point-of-care lateral flow assay. The WHO guidelines recommend screening at a CD4 count of 100 and even conditionally at 200. If you test negative, you can start ART. If you test positive, start with preemptive therapy while further confirming cryptococcal meningitis via a lumbar puncture regardless of symptoms. This test and treat modality, using fluconazole as induction, consolidation, and maintenance, has been shown to decrease the incidence of cryptococcal meningitis from 20 to 5%, as well as reduce mortality. In fact, a campaign to end cryptococcal meningitis by 2030 encourages setting national targets to achieve a CRAG screening of 95% among those who are eligible. Cryptococcal antigenemia is a spectrum of clinical conditions, from preclinical asymptomatic infection, subclinical infection, and overt meningitis, when we expect a CRAG-positive CSF. This whole process, if untreated, can develop within a median of 3 weeks. An untreated baseline cryptococcal antigenemia predicts the development of cryptococcal meningitis within 1 year with 100% sensitivity and 96% specificity. Cryptococcal infection rarely develops in those who test negative with CRAG. So just a few things that describe cryptococcal antigenemia. 1, despite antifungal treatment, testing positive for CRAG results in a 2 to 3-fold higher mortality risk within 6 months compared to those without antigenemia. Because the majority of deaths are still related to cryptococcal infection, it is postulated that fluconazole alone as a preemptive therapy might be inadequate. Number 2, the increased risk of mortality among CRAG positive may be a genetic predisposition. Having antigenemia might increase susceptibility to other pathogens, and the cryptococcal pathogen itself and its components have multiple immunosuppressive effects. And third, because of the possibility that fluconazole alone may not be enough as preemptive therapy, clinical trials are underway comparing it to other regimens. Second issue in this case is the availability of recommended medications to treat cryptococcal meningitis effectively. This is the 2022 WHO recommendations ranked in order from left to right. In the Philippines, only the regimens enclosed in the red box are available. We don't have flucytosine. The recommendations were changed after an RCT comparing a single high dose of liposomal amphotericin B combined with oral flucytosine and fluconazole for 14 days was found to have a lower mortality risk than the previous 2018 recommendation, with a risk difference of minus 5.7, and significantly fewer experiences of adverse events such as anemia and hypokalemia. There is substantial difference in cost between liposomal amphotericin B versus amphotericin B deoxycholate. However, we must look at the overall cost difference of therapy. So for my last slide, I have here cost effectiveness of both the diagnostic and therapeutic sides of cryptococcal meningitis management. To give an example, in Vietnam, with a cryptococcal meningitis prevalence of 4%, a cryptococcal screening program would have an increase in cost per year life gained of $137. WHO considers an intervention to be very cost effective if the incremental cost effectiveness ratio is less than the GDP per capita of the region, which for Vietnam was $6,948. Hence, a CRAG screening program is very cost effective, even with the addition of fluconazole for maintenance, and the same seen in Brazil. For the single high-dose liposomal amphotericin B as induction therapy, a 5-country analysis showed cost effectiveness, which, when considering the lower drug-related toxicity and the potential shorter hospital stay, might be even less costly. Access to liposomal amphotericin B and even flucytosine remains extremely limited in low to middle income countries. We are fortunate that expanded access to these drugs have been granted by either manufacturers or the innovator drugs or developmental partners. And in summary, I would like to reiterate these points. Even under optimal conditions, cryptococcal meningitis mortality is high. CRAG screen and test approach reduces the incidence of cryptococcal meningitis. Point-of-care CD4 cell count can facilitate same-day initiation of fluconazole as preemptive therapy. Cryptococcal antigenemia remains a risk factor for death in advanced stage IV disease. A clear referral criteria from the primary healthcare department to inpatient care is needed as we see more patients with AHD. Task sharing with nursing and community providers can overcome human resource limitations, especially with point-of-care tests that do not require intensive laboratory equipments. Liposomal amphotericin B and flucytosine and CRAG screening must be made available to more areas. Thank you for your kind attention.